Welcome to the Faith Focused Free Thinking Podcast, the ministry of Ozaki Congregational Church in Grafton, Wisconsin. This is our 29th episode. We're glad you're with us. Hello, welcome to the Faith Focused Free Thinking Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Danny.
All right. So today we decided we're going to talk about the church. What is the church? What's happening with the church? Why is the church important? Is the church important? What's changing? Does the church need to adapt? Why do we go to church? I mean, we're involved in the church, obviously. Our church is unique, perhaps, in being faith-focused and free-thinking. This is the Faith-Focused Free-Thinking Podcast, and obviously we find church important in some ways, or we wouldn't be involved in it. So that's the plan for today.
What is a church? Let's start there.
It's a good question.
Define our terms.
Define our terms. Well, I think you could talk about this in a number of different ways, right? If you look up the definition of a church, well, it's a building where people go to worship, right? Or it's the group of people, it's the congregation. It is that group of people that make up sort of the church. Or it's the capital C church, which is everybody that goes to any church anywhere makes up
the body of Christ.
The body of Christ, yeah. We talk about it from a theological standpoint or a New Testament standpoint or the assembly of people together. There's something about the people gathering together.
You hear non-church people when asked why they don't go to church. I think one of the common responses is, well, there's a bunch of hypocrites in the church.
Sure.
Or sinners in the church, right?
Right.
So people reject a version of church, not necessarily the real thing. A specific body of people that they interacted with that they don't like.
Right. But at the same time, right, that's all people have. I mean, the church to them is their experience. And we only have what we hope the church would be and what we hope the church is. But functionally speaking, or practically speaking, to people who are rejecting the church, they're rejecting what they have experienced the church to be.
Sure. And I think it's safe to say that your experience with church is going to be vastly different than most other people's experiences. Church is not a monolith.
Yes. Yes.
Why don't we start with church attendance, kind of where the church is today. And we're speaking in broad terms, not our church specifically, but just churches in general.
Yes. And I think we're maybe in some ways focused on the church in America, although
sure.
The church worldwide, the Christian church worldwide to some degree, yeah, we're focusing more on the church in America. In 1980, 90% of people in America would have had some religious affiliation. By 2007, that number had dropped to 78%. By 2023, 2024, that number had dropped to 62%. And obviously that has affected church attendance. I think according to a Pew Research poll, 49% say they rarely or never attend a religious service. 25% of people say they attend in person at least once a month. And 40% attend once a month, whether in person or online.
Sure.
So there's a significant decline in religious affiliation and decline in church attendance, a corresponding decline in church attendance.
Yeah, I saw the statistics you pulled up. I'd be interested to know what those numbers looked like, say, 100 years ago. I would imagine probably pretty close to 100% affiliation, and then, pretty high attendance.
Yes,
Regular.
yes, no question. I mean, even 50 years ago, or I guess 1980 is 40 years ago, 40, you know.
It doesn't feel like that long ago.
No. You say 50 years ago and you think the 1950s. That's what I think. But
No.
yeah.
So why do we think that is? Why do you think church attendance and affiliation has declined?
No, I mean, it's a good question. And I think people point to a number of different things. Just a general growing among young people, a distrust of institutions.
Sure.
And I mean, maybe there's a bunch of distractions and other things too. Like the churches are not the only institution in decline in terms of attendance. Other civic organizations, Rotary clubs, the Lions Club, all of these are in decline as well in terms of attendance. Families having fewer kids, you know, dropping birth rate, that affects things. The political polarization, you know, the ease of travel, people attend church less often, even if they're still connected to a particular church. Pastors, we want to accuse youth sports of and having an effect, and certainly it does. As I looked up youth sports this week, they say the statistics I found were that we don't have fewer kids participating in youth sports, at least at early ages. And that has not really affected things very much. But the kids that do participate, there's greater intensity, a greater time commitment, a greater structure, like there's a greater commitment to youth sports.
Well, and you and I, and probably most of our listeners, when we were growing up, there was nothing on Sundays except church.
Right.
And Wednesday evenings. Nothing
Right.
on Wednesday evenings.
Right.
And yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. It's not just sports, clubs, drama, dance, all kinds of things that pull our time,
Yep.
you know, on Sundays.
The church is competing with more. And I don't know. I wonder what that is, right? Or why that is, rather. I wonder why that is. That is, I mean, there's a distrust of institutions, or, I mean, what is it that people are now finding less value in the church? Obviously on Sunday morning, and a greater value on their kids' participation and their participation in other activities.
I think we really saw a major shift when the pandemic hit. And I think it was just, we had a Band-Aid on the situation, like church attendance was ready to collapse. And then the pandemic, COVID hit. And I haven't looked at the numbers, but I think there's a big difference in that church attendance just from before or after the pandemic.
Yes, no, I think that's true. I mean, it's certainly true for us, although the pandemic seemed to accelerate some things that were already on the move, right, or in the works. And one of the obvious ones is technology, live streaming. Our church didn't live stream. I think a lot of churches didn't live stream before the pandemic. We posted services or posted sermons, but that very few people watched. And now that we live stream, I mean, obviously it's a great tool, but fewer people attend in person for that reason.
Sure.
You know,
It's more convenient.
more convenient. Yep.
Yeah, the church I was at did not live stream, and it took 6 months or more to get the camera to live stream, because when the pandemic hit, all of these churches and other organizations were scrambling to get the equipment, and there was just a back order on it, so it took forever to get the equipment.
Yeah. Well, you know, we started live streaming quickly, I mean, when we were first back in, but the equipment we had was, well, let's just say we've improved a ton from our first day of live streaming to where we are now, and improved along the way, and that's been great.
You have a statistic here. It says 83% of Americans still believe in God or a higher power, but are less affiliated with organized religion. Do you think that, so if that's true, that seems to indicate that spirituality hasn't necessarily decreased, that people still identify as Christian or other religion, but just aren't involved in the church. Would you say that's the case?
I think that's largely accurate, although certainly the number of people who would say that they believe in God, I think is down. They talk about the rise of the nuns, right? Those who would claim no religious affiliation. Now, whether or not those people would still believe in some sort of higher power. Like if we had 90% of people in 1980 were religiously affiliated, and now we're down to 62%. I mean, you would have to think that in 1980 then even a greater percentage than 90 would say they believed in God or some higher power, and now we're down at 83%, right? So it's declined in people's belief in God in some way, but more so, yeah, people's affiliation with religious institutions, yeah. So let's talk about, I mean, obviously we still think the church is important or still has a role, even though both of us look at church differently than we used to. And a significant shift, I think, in our minds, certainly, and maybe in other people's minds related to the church, is that I think I would say the church is a place to belong more than it is a place to believe, right? We say at OCC all the time that the first thing we want the church to be is a community, a place for people to belong, right? Where people are known and people build relationships with others and people have people to reach out to, people they can call, kind of thing. Less than, and particularly our church, we are not a place where we're telling people what to believe, right? Or even telling people who God is. Even though we're a Christian expression of faith, we're attempting to help people ask the questions and walk along the journey of faith, trying to figure out what is it that I believe about the world and God and myself and all of that. And so the church is less a place, well, at least in my mind, or I think what we want the church to be, less a place of belief and more a place of belonging.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the fact that there are over 47,000 Christian denominations worldwide.
Yes.
And that's what Google's AI told me was as of like 2024. So who knows, there could be even more now. So I think that our church, OCC, is in the minority of churches in the fact that, as you were saying, we're not telling everyone this is what you have to believe. We have the only way, the only path to God, right?
Right.
There are churches out there that similar to us. I was in the ELCA Lutheran tradition, and I think the services there and the services here would be pretty similar. They're a little more liturgical. But very similar philosophies of, we don't think we have all the answers. We don't have the way to God, and you have to follow our path. But I feel like probably the majority of those denominations and churches out there are very hardline, this is the way, and this is the only way. And there's so much variety of issues that this particular denomination thinks this way about something, and this particular denomination thinks this way. Just as an example, the concept of salvation or soteriology. So, there's verses that say, repent and be baptized to be saved. And there's verses that say, no, it's faith only. And then there's verses that say, faith and works. And there are churches that follow each of those kind of things. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's just one little issue. Like, there's so many different issues that these denominations differ on. But yeah, I appreciate the fact that OCC says, hey, we don't have it all figured out.
Right. Yep. No, and I mean, denominational differences, and even the churches that do represent a sort of confident certainty, or sometimes it comes across as arrogant certainty, right, that we have it right. And there's something attractive about that. Like, I think this is why we have flocked to it over the years. We want to know, right? Tell me what is right. Tell me what is true. I just want to We desperately don't like mystery or uncertainty. It's unsettling to us. I mean, it's interesting, you get people, I don't know, they flock to somebody who's going to tell them this is the way it is. And you can be assured of this, and because we want that, right? And I don't know, maybe 47,000 different denominations, just sort of appealing to people's desire for certainty.
I'm sure some of those splits are, over the color of the carpet and
Certainly.
things like
Certainly.
that. But, a lot of it is doctrinal differences.
Right.
When you look at all of these other people out here, and they're all these dogmatic people, and you're like, no, they're all wrong. I have it perfectly correct.
Well, that's tough. But even if that's the case, I mean, this is just what people know. I think we both know people that represent their faith. I mean, we've used the word arrogantly, but we know a lot of people who hold on to certain faith in the way that they look at things, but are really attempting to do it lovingly and kindly and whatever, even if, they would say this is the right way and there is no other kind of thing. I mean, this is all that people know and what they've been brought up in, and we're in this desperate pursuit of getting it right.
I have a question from our associate minister, Rob, longtime listener, first time caller. Right. So he found out that we were doing this episode, and he wanted me to ask, do you think God is pleased or disappointed by all of the division and or diversity when we think about all of these different denominations?
I don't like to think of God as disappointed. And I think God understands, right? God understands what it's like to be us. This is what we hold on to in the person of Christ. And is it ideal? Well, no. Nothing in life is ideal. I mean, what we hold on to, what we hope for, is that one day God will unify all of us in His love and bring everything together, right? This is the Christian hope. Yeah, nothing is ideal. And I don't think God is disappointed. I think God, He wants us to make good decisions and head in the right direction and be less self-focused and less arrogant and more caring and more loving and all of that, right? But, this is the way the world is. And what I find good about 47,000 different denominations is what people need more than anything is they need belonging and community and hope and meaning and purpose. And I think that people find it in these different places. You know what I mean? And that's a good thing. Even if at times people represent it poorly. I think wherever people find community and meaning and purpose and hope, and in a way that enables them to love themselves and love others, I think is a good thing. What do you think?
I think that division is inevitable. It's part of the human nature.
Yes.
I'm a musician, so just think about music. How many bands, rock bands, split up and go off and form their own band because they can't get along? Humans just don't get along. And the more people spend time together in an environment, the more likely they are to have fractures and split apart.
Yes. Yeah. The number one reason that missionaries leave the mission field is interpersonal conflict with other missionaries. Yes, division is inevitable, and relationships are complicated. And sometimes we're dividing not over theology or not even over important things. We're dividing over the color of the carpet, right? Which really just means we're dividing over our own pride and selfishness. And this is just the human condition. And how do we try to, be aware of that? And
I can't remember if this is a conversation you and I have had, but in the South, in the Bible Belt, there's a church on every corner,
Yeah.
right? And you can drive down the street and be like, oh yeah, that church split off from that one, and that one split off from that one, and
Right.
they couldn't
right.
agree on the color of the walls or the carpet, or
Right. Right.
they believe exactly the same. Their doctrinal statements are identical, but
Right. Right.
somebody got upset over some decision.
Right. But maybe what that has served to do, right, even if these things happen poorly or for not the right reasons, well, now there are two communities that people can join and find a place to belong. And then those places split, well, now there's four or whatever. It multiplies and spreads. And again, we hope one day we'll all be one church with one God at the head. For now, the division and separation of churches has provided multiple places for people to belong. And I think that has been a good thing. The Pew Research said it seems like the two types of churches that are growing are, one, mega churches that have really strong and dynamic programming, right? A place for every kid, or programs, multiple programs, and different activities that people can be involved in. I mean, it's just sort of one-stop shopping, right? So that those seem to be growing. And also small churches that have a high sense of community and a strong identity, right? And I mean, obviously we would fit the latter if, OCC is, I think we have a real strong sense of community here. I mean, people that feel a sense of community, feel an ownership of OCC. We have such a great group of people. And it's those type of churches, I think, that are growing and where people find a place to belong. Why is the church important? Why does the church still matter? Why does the church exist? What makes it unique?
I read something, I'm not going to be able to pull from where, that, well, let me back up. So frequently Christians make the claim that Christians give more money to the poor than atheists. And it's not actually true. Most Christians' charitable donations go to their church. And the percentage of that money that then gets funneled to the poor is fairly low. As opposed to atheists, charitable contributions are going to organizations, for example, that would directly help the poor. So is the function of the church to take care of poor people? I believe it is one of the jobs of the church, but it's not why the church exists, right?
Right.
So for me, okay, let me answer it this way. Why do I go to church? A number of reasons. It's what I've done most of my life. Mm-hmm. It's comfortable. I am a church musician. I enjoy participating in church music. I am also not able to do a whole lot individually for other people. I don't have the kind of resources that I can make a huge impact in so-and-so random person on the street. I feel that my involvement in this church enables me to have an impact on the community at large, greater than I can as an individual. So I don't have a lot of money. I'm not giving this church a lot of money. But I am giving my time and my abilities to help the church be what it is. And then for me, by extension, what the church does to help the community is partly because of me. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
And I also go to church because of the sense of community.
Yeah.
So I am, people probably don't know this about me, I'm actually a very introverted person. And I tend to become a hermit when allowed to. So when the pandemic hit, I was happy. This was before I met my wife, Heather. I had my 1-bedroom apartment in Milwaukee. I stayed in my apartment. I never had to see other people. I went out once a week to go to the grocery store. And I thrived under it. I don't need, constant interaction with people. But I do recognize that community is important. And so for me, it forces me to be involved in a community, and I know that that's good for me. It's not good for me to be a hermit.
Yes.
So going back to what I was saying about giving money to the poor, while I recognize that contributing money to the church isn't, not all that money is going to help the poor or to, a variety of whatever the community needs. A portion of it is, but it's more than just that. That is one of our duties as a church, is to be a positive impact on the community, but it's also being a positive impact on the people inside our walls.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No. Well, I really like this quote, and I've mentioned it on Sunday morning a couple times, from Kent Laverne, who's the district attorney in Milwaukee. And he just said, the church is a public safety asset. I mean, exactly right. I mean, why the church exists is to be a community of people with their expressed purpose of caring for one another, right? And if every person in our community, if every person in the world was involved in a group of people where the expressed purpose was for them to care for one another, we would have less crime, we would have less dangerous situations, whatever. The church is a public safety. Involving people in communities where people care for one another makes our society safer, right? And so our contributions to the church, even if you want to say people's financial contribution to the church, to enable the community to exist in the way it does, is a contribution to the safety of the community and the city and the church, right? I mean, it just provides something, I think, so important and so critical in that way. Now, it's not the only place where people find community.
Sure.
People find it in groups in their neighborhood, and I mean, which is great, obviously. But there's something unique about the church in that its expressed purpose is that people would care for one another and find meaning and purpose, in that. It was funny. I was talking to my sister yesterday, and her husband, they have one kid at home now, and she's the same age as Anders, so she'll be gone in a couple of years. And effectively, they say lots of times they just live like empty nesters because their daughter's involved in so much, right? So they have 2 kids in college. So my brother-in-law has been like, what do I do now, right? So one of the things he's done in the past couple of years is he started a poker night for guys. And he sort of just invited everybody and anybody, and they do it once a month. And it's really sort of gained some traction, particularly over the past couple months, and guys really look forward to it, right? And it's this, they're coming together to play poker. That's their expressed purpose, right? But in the midst of it, they get to know one another, and one guy's coming and he's not drinking because he's going through a difficult time in his life, and he said, I don't want to, add alcohol into the mix or whatever, right? So, my Ryan, my brother-in-law, is like, okay, how do we, get him to report on that? Obviously, he's telling us that, kind of thing. And so here these guys are finding a community, on this poker night, right? And I told my sister, tell Ryan that what he's really doing is starting a church, right? that's the, you know what I mean? So anyways, I just think the church, just by its existence in the community, has such value. And without it, I'm not sure what replaces it. Poker night does, maybe. Youth sports, maybe. But there's something unique about the church. And, it's not, I was going to say it's not coincidental. I don't know if I know that, but just that loneliness is an epidemic in our country. It was exacerbated by if loneliness was a thing even 30 or 40 years ago, and it was exacerbated by the internet and social media, and we're more connected and yet disconnected, and then exacerbated further by the pandemic. I just think there's a big need for community. And looking that up, the stats on that, 1 in 3 Americans report feeling lonely, 1 in 4 lack adequate social support. They say about 1 in 5 U.S. adults who've never been to church or haven't been in at least 6 months say they have no community at all. And there's a significant opportunity there for the church. Where did we start? How did I get started on that? What were we talking about?
Why we go to church.
Oh, why we go to church. Yes.
I kind of answered.
Yep.
You want to add why you go to church, or?
No, so I guess I would say to answer the question, why do I go to church? Well, I guess I'd start with my pitch to anybody that comes to church or asks me, why is church important? Why should they go to church? Maybe the same reason that I do. And the things you mentioned too, the church has been my whole life, right? I grew up in it. This is, whatever. But to anybody saying, why should they go to church? I would say, for an hour a week or 2 hours a week, you will buy yourself a community of people that care about you. And we all need that. And you can find that other places. If you work on building relationships in your neighborhood, or on your kid's sports team, or at work, relationships, they take work to develop. And even relationships at church take work to develop. You've got to get to know people. You've got to introduce yourself. You've got to whatever. But the church provides a group of people that meets 52 weeks out of the year. And if you go every Sunday for 2 months, particularly to a church like ours, where it's small enough where you can get to know people reasonably quick. Pretty soon you'll know people and people will know you. And I think there's great value in that. Secondarily, I think the church does offer at least a place to think about the deep questions of life. And think about and consider and discuss and talk about the questions of meaning and purpose in life, and where do we find hope, and all of that. And at the very least, the church is a place where that is pursued. Now, some places, the church is a place where we have all those answers, or this is, whatever. But I heard one guy say, I think thinking about those things for 1 hour a week seems like a good use of time. So, thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I want to add to my answer too, because it is a list. I think that for me, church helps me to become a better person, a better version of myself.
Yes.
And my faith is important to me. Not the most important thing in my life. There are people who would probably put their faith up at the top, right? That's the most important thing. That's not me. I don't know where to rank it, but it is important to me.
Yeah.
And having a place to explore that faith with like-minded people is important as well. And I like studying the Bible on my own. I dive into some pretty obscure things about the Bible, and that's great, but it's also helpful to have people to bounce things off of and challenge each other. So.
Yes. No, I think you're exactly right, meaning I think it's a great reason to come to church, and hopefully part of the reason that the church exists, and a reason that other people come to church is to be a better version of themselves, or to find some inspiration, encouragement, instruction, ideas, whatever, that would help them better navigate life in a positive way, right? And certainly, I think we would say we want the church to be that for people, right? Yeah. What did you learn at church today? Right? We ask that, or that something people hear or experience at church, yeah, would enable them to live life better. Yeah. What do we think about? Are there things that the church needs to do to adapt to the world that we live in? Declining church attendance, or
Do you mean our church or in general?
well, you could say our church. You could say the Church Universal, the Church in America, the capital C Church. I mean, if the purpose of the church is to be a place for people to belong, a place for people to find meaning and hope, purpose, a place for people to be a better version of themselves, all of those things, and in so doing, help the world to be a better place. Yeah, what is it that the church needs to do to adapt to the changing culture? What are the ways the church has adapted? Even if you talk about social media, or we adapted related to the pandemic. How do we adapt to the challenges of people's distrust of institutions, people's activity or involvement in more activities, increased travel, fewer kids, all of those things,
I don't know that I have an idea about what the Big C Church needs to do. I think I could say what it shouldn't do. And that is that I feel that some churches are trying to be what the church has never been. And I'm not going to call out a specific denomination or church or anything, but they're trying to be maybe a social club or a secular institution that appeals to these people that have left the church. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, say more about that. In what way the church is that?
So this matter of decline has been happening since the 80s, or maybe even before that. And I think the response of some churches has been, well, what are they getting outside of the church that they're not getting in the church? So putting a Starbucks in your lobby, your church lobby. To some extent, the praise element, strobe lights, and spotlights, and, fog machines, and it becomes a production. I saw there was a mega church this past Christmas season who had this several $100,000 Christmas production where they had like live camels on the stage, and they were like flying people in the air, and like Jesus was descending and he's flying, he's suspended by ropes. And did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, yes, I churches, yeah.
So I just don't think that the church can compete with that aspect of the outside world, right? Like if you want to go to a Taylor Swift show, you're gonna get a better production than you're ever gonna find in a church, right?
Sure.
Or you can go to the Milwaukee Rep and watch a show there, and the churches can't rival that kind of quality, right?
Sure.
So I don't think we should try. Like, I think we should focus on the things that we're good at, which is relational.
Yeah.
The relationships in the church and the people that we get to know and are invested in their lives.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And I think, yeah, the church focus on the things that it's good at. Building relational community, but I think part of that is what the church provides an opportunity for people to use some of their gifts or to be involved in ways that they would not be able to be involved in other places, right? And, whether that's, even learning to speak in front of people or playing an instrument or reciting something or, all these things that, you could do with your immediate family, right? You might do with your immediate family at Christmas. you put on a talent show, or you write, or whatever. Everybody can do something. Well, the church provides that opportunity on a little bit of a grander scale, you know, and there's community is built in that way. You know what I mean? Getting people involved in various ways. So, but yes, I think your point is well taken, that sometimes some churches think, well, our goal is to put on the best show we can, right? When, okay, that's not what we're good at. That's not what the church, you know, is its primary purpose is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would hope it's obvious that, you know, I am all for, you know, having Praise Band Sunday.
Yes.
If we have a cappuccino machine in Fellowship Hall, that's great. It's fine.
Yes.
You know, I'm not like opposed to those things. I don't drink coffee, so I don't even know what we have over there. It's more like trying to compete with the secular institutions on their level, and like, don't try.
Yes.
Let's stay in our lane, do what we're good at.
Yes. Well, and maybe that's why there's something so good about what people find in a church like ours, or in a church the size of ours, right? Sort of the small community church, right? Where what we want is for relationships to form and people to be known, right? It's easy to go to a mega church, and I think mega churches have their place. It's not, you know, whatever. Sure. That's great. You know, God uses it all, but it's easier to go to a mega church and you can go sit in the back and watch the show, and there's something to take from that. Again, you know, and out the door, and that's it, right? It's tougher to do that here, to come and not be noticed, right? And we were going to notice you and want to find out who you are, and all of that. And again, I think what everybody needs, right? Even the introvert who wants to stay in his apartment, right? We all need community. We need relationships. And I don't know if you and I have talked about it. I know that I've talked about this here. People will remember this, right? But maybe you're familiar with this. But you know, Harvard did a 75-year study asking the question, what makes people happy and healthy throughout their lives? And of course, a 75-year study is exceedingly difficult to do. It's got to pass down from director to director, right? The funding has to continue, all of that. But they took back in, I can't remember what year it was, the 40s maybe, or maybe it was the 30s even. They took, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but 400 people from the Boston area, some who were college students, I think, at, you know, sort of more the upper echelons of society, and then half of whom were from some of the poorest neighborhoods in Boston. And they followed them throughout their whole lives, and asking the question, what keeps people happy and healthy? And I mean, they interviewed them, they interviewed their families, they did medical tests, and like an extensive study, right? And some people in the study, you know, they climbed the socioeconomic ladder, and some started in the top and slid down to the bottom, right? I mean, all manner of things happen in these people's lives, right, as they study them. And after 75 years, there were still, I think, out of 800 or whatever it was, there were still 70 people involved in the study, still participating. And at some point, they added the wives, or I don't know if added the wives, but somehow added women to the study, which they had not started with women in the 40s or 30s. And he said, the director who gave a talk on this, he said, what have we learned? He said this: the clearest answer that we have to that question, what keeps people happy and healthy through their lives, is this: good relationships keep people happy and healthy. Period. You know, and it's not the number of relationships. I mean, some people are more introverted and don't need as many, you know, and some people more extroverted, whatever. But just that there's people in their lives that they know they can count on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we all need that. And I hope that the relationships that people find at church, where we're here specifically to care for one another, that people find those kind of relationships. And for that reason, the church is important. Yeah. But you know, yeah, not every person is going to fit at every church, right? And You're going to go to, some people go to some churches and they don't find a connection or whatever, or whatever's being talked about or the sense they get, this is not for me, that's okay. And certainly that's been true of our church. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. But every church provides a place for somebody.
I'm going to ask you a question that I asked you when you first interviewed me.
Oh, yeah.
I said, when we first talked, I think it was a Zoom meeting or something.
Oh, okay.
I said, I'm looking for a church that I can serve in for the next 20 years or so, and then I'll, be too old to do it or whatever.
Right.
And I said, do you think OCC is still going to be here 20 years from now? So let me ask you again. Where do you see OCC in 20 years? Or where do you see it in 100 years?
It's a great question. That's a great question. In fact, somebody just asked that question at Bible study the other week. I was leading Bible study because Rob was sick. Rob had COVID, whatever. And it was just sort of a question and answer. We talked about a number of things, but then somebody sort of asked that question. They said, where do you see OCC in 5 years, right? But I think my answer would be the same, right? That 40 years ago when OCC started, they bought this facility, this sanctuary that we're sitting in right now. 2 years later, I think it was 86, maybe 87, they built Fellowship Hall, right? And since that time, what OCC has done is provided worship services on Sunday and fellowship opportunities for people to interact and get to know one another. And OCC has provided opportunities for people to be involved in the community, has tried to reach out in its community. And along the way, different people have come and different people have left for whatever reason, and here we are today, right? And if in the next 5 years, or the next 20 years, the next 40 years, the next 100 years, what OCC continues to do is provide services for people, fellowship opportunities, service opportunities in the community. If it continues to be a place where people find community and people find hope and people wrestle through the questions of life and people try to be a better version of themselves, I think that would be great. That 20 years from now, we're doing the same thing we're doing today, and with different people, right? Some different people. Some people obviously would still be here. I think that would be a success. And with the people that we have here and the community that we're in, and who can predict the future, the unforeseen, who knows? But I could foresee us in 20 years being right where we are and still offering what we're offering and still people finding community and hope and meaning here. And I think that would be great.
I think it's probably one of the few things that isn't going to be replaced by AI and robots.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yep. Well, that's it. That is episode 29. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, shoot us a note. You can just email jeff@occhurch.org. Hope you have a wonderful rest of April, and we will see you sometime in May.